I'm Anthony Nguyen. Join us as we change the narrative around aged care, one story at a time. Right. Welcome back to the Pioneers in Aged Care podcast. Here we have Robert Covino, the CEO of Mirus Australia. So look, thank you so much for being on the podcast. It was a pretty short notice. Shout out to Owen Matheson for introducing us. He's a bit of a legend. I'm not just saying that because he's standing behind the camera, but no, he was awesome. Helped me carry the bags up the stairs, which I would have died doing because it's been a big day. I came to Sydney for a conference, and when Owen mentioned that you were interested in being the podcast, I was like, yeah, I've heard of him. Who hasn't in aged care? So thank you. I know you're a busy guy, and it's getting late on a Friday. You could be doing a million things, but you're spending it with me, so I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
No, thank you for having me.
So let's dig into Mirus. Firstly, how did that name come about? And tell me about the organization.
Yeah, so Mirus was, when you're starting a company, you're really looking at what's not taken in the domain world, and also, what doesn't have any references to, I guess, other adjacent companies that you don't want to be linked to. And there's a pretty funny story. One of our competitors at the time, called Provider Assist, they had a .com.au, but the .com actually took you to a naughty site. So we wanted to make sure we were not, okay, sort of banned with that sort of area. But then you're looking at also the social, cause, and we are a for-purpose organization. So we wanted to find available, domains that really were short, sharp, and sweet. And it brought us back to the origins, Latin dictionary. And Mirus was something we identified with in a lot of the terminology, that is the derivative of miracle. So wonderful, astonishing, all the things we wanted our clients to feel as they really receive services from our teams, insights in the data. And that's where Mirus, and because we're in Australia, just had to call it out and say, from the accent, it's still working on the Australian, but
well, given your status and reputation in the industry, I think you've lived up to the name. So good on you for choosing a name and with those lofty expectations. And yeah, you've hit the mark, and I'm sure there's still more to go. Tell me, what does Mirus do?
So Mirus, our journey really started with passionate management consulting. My team and myself and the business was really founded working inside of the Big Four. We saw an opportunity after helping set up Australia's largest aged care provider, which is Opal. That was my first gig in building the finance function there at a time when the funding instrument came in. And I loved the work so much because I could see how we were making impact to not only the organization, but when you would go to the sites and you see the team members, the facility managers, and then ultimately the residents. I've never experienced consulting work where I could see all the way from the exec and the head office function. We were spending most of our time, but the execution was really tangible and happening week by week as we were setting that business up. So that really locked in the fact that I found my industry. I love this. How do I get back and focus on this? And once we finished up that job, it was 9 months up in the Gold Coast, made some great relationships with team members like Sean Bilton, who's now CEO of Vestia. He was working for A&P Infrastructure. We had the clinical team led by some of the key members up at North Shore Private Hospital now over there. So a real great team that I really loved. And when I got back to the firm, as many of you know, actually came in 2008, but the other thing that happened in 2008 was the global financial crisis. And we came off that engagement in around November, which was right after Lehman Brothers and a number of these businesses where I was friends that I'm envious of their careers going, my God, how did you get that job? And sure enough, back at home living with their parents. And meanwhile, I'm at the firm, and there was no work on. There's literally in an office building of maybe 500 desks, something like 1,500 consultants back from jobs, all looking to find the next one. And there was nothing to go to. And because everything I was doing for Opal at the time was so fresh in mind, I just turned my attention to, hey, at the time there's 1,700 other providers out there that could benefit from what we were doing with AMP and Opal. What are they doing about this? And sure enough, we just ran it to a couple of the firm's friendlies, and it was actually Churches of Christ in New South Wales. It was one of our first engagements under the PwC brand, and from there it just became one after another, and we found our niche. And I continued to do that for about 2 years, and then effectively found my calling. And I wasn't joining the Big Four to be a career partner or any of that. I really wanted to come to Australia and see industries, and that's what the Big Four provided me for 6 years. And then once I found it, and that's really the only objective I had, was to learn this country. Even culturally, we're very similar to the Americans, but everything's just different. You got gridiron, and you got AFL, then you got NASCAR, you got V8, you got baseball, you got cricket. So it was the passions are there, but it was just slightly different. Yeah, and that was really what was the driver.
It's a bizarro world.
It was a bizarre world, but also to the Americans, Australia's like that, that adorable cousin that you just remember growing up with. I was always there at your ankles, and kind of annoying you sometimes, but most times it was very endearing. And I think, to me, that's I actually can't go back, but as a result, I've committed to family and everything here, and I've actually no longer hold my U.S. citizenship, which is one of those facts you kind of throw out there when people are sort of, tell me something I don't know about you. Well, I don't have American citizenship anymore, but I'm a Diggy Aussie.
So you could hold dual citizenship?
You can, but the Americans let you hold it because you pay tax to that passport no matter where you live, and also there's just a lot of my wife and two kids. She's American and English, and then now Australian, and the kids are kind of like, who are we? So we were like, you're Australian, okay, and they have the right to get a passport of America, but in the Americas, but right now they're just dinky die Aussies. So
let me ask a silly question, because this podcast, one of the purposes of the podcast is to bring outside eyes into aged care, and part of that is informing and educating people who don't know anything about aged care, or different aspects about aged care, and helping them understand what it's about. I take that a little bit further, and when I interview people, I ask really basic questions because it's for my own educational purposes too. Mm-hmm. You said Mirus is essentially management consultants. What does a management consultant do?
Yeah, that's a great question. This is a question I'm
sure
asking myself the same way, because I came out here and I was originally with IBM, and then my father-in-law, who was mentoring me, he was saying, "Well, Mom, have you ever thought about going into consulting?" And I was like, well, kind of sounds pretty broad. Like, what do you mean? Like, what does that look like? And it did take me, a little bit of research, and then getting onto the Big Four websites to see what that is. But for us, it really is about tackling the bigger problems of our industry and of our clients. And I say industry as well because when you're in a regulated market, the problems are quite similar. We all have the same regulations and legislation, but part of our role is to really share the good, bad, and ugly of successes and failures, because a lot of what we do, but also what the industry is doing at this time with a new world of post-reform operations, it's pioneering. Like, every group is really setting a new course, and we're still waiting to see even some of the final legislation purposes. But at the same time, providers also want to put their own uniqueness and spin and model of care and model of experience onto that. And so I love the stability of the frameworks that underpin really the success of our industry, but then that ability to really create a vision that they want to stand by for their families and residents. And our role is really to help them execute that and run sustainable businesses in a new world of operations. And so that's what management consulting.
And correct me if I'm oversimplifying it. So if I was to give an analogy, would you be like a mechanic who opened the hood, look at the inefficiencies, and would you be expert in each area, or you'd have management consultants in your team who'd be experts in each area and smooth those out?
That's a great question. Where we really start is like the data and the diagnostics, like as more modern cars, and especially anyone who's got a EV. I haven't ventured all the way into the full EVs yet, but to really understand what's going on, start with really what's happening with the data, and then really mirror that with some of the discussions with the clients or with the key heads of these businesses to also get more of an alignment to what part of the framework is not working for them. And that's part of, I guess, the methodologies behind consulting, is that we look at worlds through business processes, the business technology, the flow of data, and enabling the business to also measure itself and understand success and even potential failure in these indicators. And then most importantly, the people, understanding culturally what's happening. Is there leadership skill gaps? All aspects, but together, that sort of PTOF framework that we talk through or use is really a combination of data that we have on the industry and our clients, but then overlaid with really the individual areas that we then start to hone in on and ask. There's a framework of 5 whys, and typically after you get to the 5th why, you've got a good sense of what's happening with, in our sector today. Probably one of the problems. There's typically a lot happening, which is a fascinating time to be in a role that our company is at and working through it, but also seeing the success and the changes we're helping shape and really taking an entire industry through a business transformation. Like that's what's happening today in the aged care world. We would do this at PwC in my old firm when I was in the transformation team, business division or business unit at a time. This is happening at an industry-wide level, which is fascinating. Probably something will be referred upon in Harvard or Stanford business cases and business school sort of papers, because you don't have this type of collective transformation of a significant industry with the level of the regulations and forces that are making providers go through this. That's really what's so fascinating about the role, but that's how, as a management consultant, we approach it. So yeah, the car analogy is spot on.
Can you give me an example of an issue that a client engaged you for? What it was, how you solved it, what the impact to the resident would be?
Yep. Historically, and this is where it changes with the times, we started off as revenue consultants, really looking at the world through probably what is one of the more sophisticated entitlement frameworks that an industry can have with its government or payment system. Very different than America, for instance, where it's a hybrid of like a lot of private insurances and then Medicare for there's a need. But in a single pay system of a socialized healthcare platform, the frameworks and the entitlement structures from what should we be getting for this individual on a clinical level, what should they be paying for the accommodation level, what inputs are changing that because some residents have means, some don't, some are in between, and all of that is constantly changing. Whether that resident maybe sold a couple 100,000 shares of CBA stock or something, that can impact it, and the business operators and providers have to constantly be adapting to the data that's coming from these different divisions of Service Australia and ultimately impacting a payment statement, which is their sole source of and largest source of revenue. And so that's where we started, and that's where a lot of the revenue side came from, and that's still where a lot of the problems are in the market. But today, what that looks like is more about helping them understand the constructs of some of these, all of these new legislation changes. So for instance, our funding model changed from that world of ACFI and just a one sort of top line revenue type of payment system to now a compliance model where if we take money, we got to do time, just like in other parts of society. So in that, we have to evidence data, we have to evidence time in ways that our systems never had to present. So groups that are using time and attendance and other platforms, they never had to report interperiod on direct care time or non-direct care time. This is all unique insights to this marketplace in Australia. And so that's really where most of our focus has been with providers, given that was one of the first major changes the industry had in October of 2022. And with the government also starting to put more focus on the compliance to that, there's a lot of providers really trying to get in control of that. So what it means at the end of the day for the provider after the work we do is that coming back to those frameworks I'm referring to, it's a hybrid of do the people that are in the heads of these areas, rostering and payroll and ANAC funding, do they talk to each other? Do they have the right skills? Do they have the data and the tools to actually do what the business needs? Do they know what good actually looks like in their role, or are they just using some of the conventional ways of what they learned in yesteryears and applying it to today's framework, which is unfortunately what is happening more often. So it's a combination of all of that at different levels within each provider that then leads to the outcome. And the outcome today is really helping organizations run balanced and compliant outcomes to the star ratings that are really governing that compliance side. That then reduces their risk to the Safety Quality Commission so that they're not looking like an under-resourced business with RNs and carers, which we know through the Royal Commission is one of the indicators of risk to the residents out there. And finally, the sustainability of that operations, because some of those groups, and a lot of them that we see today, they don't have those teams working together in unison in which this instrument has now been thrust onto them. So therefore, they're in these cycles of either trying to catch up and get more money into the business, but by doing that, they're actually increasing their care time, and then the rostering team starts to then grab higher cost of minutes in the form of penalty rates, so grabbing people that are on their second overtime shift, going to agency, and all of that together just puts them into a non-sustainable operation. And that's really what the rewarding side comes out of, because we're finding more and more of these businesses distressed. But when you take them through that whole life cycle and find the other way, it's that nirvana for them, but now giving them the tools to stay in control of this so that their future is now one of sustainable operations, and especially for groups that represent more regional and rural operations. I mean, these are community, some of them founded, where the community actually raised the money to open the nursing home, which I live in a small community as well down in south of Sydney, and I just can't imagine like those types of things happening too often today as it did in the 60s and 70s, and then sort of iterated from there. But that's really what the whole role looks like in today's format.
I can see you really have such joy in what you do. Like it's almost like watching. Just the way you describe it, like I can see you really light up about it. You must be really excited to keep that enthusiasm, even though you've built it to this point. It's pretty easy to let your foot off the gas and coast on, going forward. But a little birdie has told me that you've got a lot more in the pipeline. You've got some announcements to make. Are you able to share? I guess the question is, what's happening in the next 12 months? What are you looking forward to?
Yeah, no, it's great. I have a lot of energy and always have. From a young age, but when you channel that energy into something you love, and this is a passion of mine, both the consulting framework and just interacting with businesses and business leaders and tackling problems. And each problem, even though it's quite similar, it's different in a different shape. So that keeps myself and my teams really enjoying the variety of the work out there in an area of passion. But then when you can overlay some more of the deep and meaningful aspects, such as I've been through the system with my father-in-law. I've experienced, I wouldn't call them like failures, but areas where we can do better, and we must do better, and we are doing better. And I think these things always take time, but the commitment to really our purpose as an organization, which is making aged care better since we were founded. That really just, I guess, drives a lot of the great team members that choose Mirus. It's also what drives me to just get out of bed every day and enjoying the work I do. And always one of the pieces of advice I was given when starting my career was, find something that you love to do. And when you find something you love to do, then work won't feel as tedious, but then you will focus on it and bring an energy and into that practice that will soon make you a specialist. And if you can become a specialist, then you can become either an industry leader, you can have a lot of things, and they'll be quite different than just a typical in working engagement. And I think as I reflected on that in my my journey, and also aligning passion to work, like all of that has really come out. I don't feel any day is work. I feel it's just supporting what I love, and I love also teaching and working with my teams on the problems and really shaping the next group of individuals that can really stay in this sector and help it continue its evolution from a cottage industry into at a time we had 3 listed organizations, but we are definitely heading more and more to an area where we're relied upon to support the acute sector. With a lot of the facilities we have are built for purpose, and we can do specialized nursing in. I see us also, I kind of a kid to myself when I used to do a lot of work in the acute sector and patient journey designs, and so worked with a lot of RNs and nurses and doctors in that area. But a lot of the nurses, sometimes they thought it would be a much easier career if they would slow down and go into the aged care like later in their careers. And I think any nurse who's had that journey or knows what I'm referring to would also chuckle, because you really have to be across everything in aged care, because every system is failing, and you have medications upon medications that you have to be across. You have complexities of workforces that you would never have, and it's a very different world, but is a world that is now more necessary with our aging population and declining taxpayers. But we are lifting the game. We are contributing more and more to the health system. And with some of the government policies, such as support at home and really in the growing force of aged care, as well as some of these additional new models like group homes and apartments for life, it's a really unique time. And so I'm really excited about it.
How many employees do you have at the moment?
We are now, with the Manad team, 43.
And what are the benefits of being an employee of yours?
Well, and my teams would probably say something different at the same time, but the ones I work with and start with, a lot of them, depending on specifically the roles from one of my CEOs that we've had over the years, I really love the work, the diversity of it, the fact that the teams that they have to lead are all committed to a vision and the purpose. So it's not like you're really having to pull people in a direction or come in and really change a organization, a drive, like the underlying passion and mission, because people choose Mirus for their own whys, and we all have our own why from our experiences in life, but they bring that to the workplace, and that does make for very different style of management. From a team level, I would say a lot of them love that variety of work, being able at a young age, or even at a new parts of their career where they're still learning, to actually interact with clients, speak to a CEO. I mean, I was again, coming from a little bit of a different culture in a Big Four. You knew your place on that, sort of consultant up to the partner level, and your role was not to speak in a meeting; it was to take notes and listen. And those formalities, we just, we have, I guess, nuances that come out of them, but in those instances, we're really encouraging, and we have a very collaborative and inquisitive sector, and they're really the core knowledge base for a lot of my team members, where my team members that come initially with the frameworks, but they're still learning and seeking understanding. And in a short period of time, what they enjoy is that in 3 months, they could have worked for 7, 8 different operators, been in different parts of the business, and fast forward 6 to 9 months, they're now pretty much an expert on seeing everything that's happening because of just the variety and also the the practices you can have reflection on. You leave one organization, something's going very well and it doesn't seem like that much of an issue, but then you move to another one and it's just completely reversed, where that's the issue and this is actually not a concern, and that's that's quite beneficial. And I know they really they raise that up, and they find that they a portion of our team, just like in the Big Four, take those skills and then continue their own career progression in the same but maybe different way. Maybe going more technology focused and taking the skills, staying in the sector, which I love because I find it very important that we nurture and build and bring the skill set of talent into our industry, because it's not there in the way that other industries can benefit from it. So that's really part of it, and part of the reason for picking the office so close to some of the technology precinct is that to find some of the best talent and brains and minds that we send into our sector, we as a technology company and a consultancy, we are competing with Big Four and the Googles, the Atlassians. So being next door to Google and having some of the attributes that you can bring to like some office culture. We don't have kitchens and all of that.
Where's the sleep pods?
Chefs and that and sleep pods, but we have as much as we can do with the the budgets our industry allow us to kind of play within. But yeah, that's I'd say the power of all three of those coming together. But they do feel with our team, and even a lot of our the senior management and executives are from the Big Four, so they are really bringing as much as we can of that experience to nurture the interns and the consultants and managers, senior managers, all the way up in achieving those aspirational objectives they want in their career. And if it means they stay with us, it's fantastic. But it's just as fantastic if they go out to the sector or the other vendors or businesses and bring those skills to continue to make our industry and adjacent industries better.
I love that you mentioned the when you're in one of those in the Big Four, you've got to know your place in the ladder, and that is deeply entrenched in myself, especially being Asian as well. It's very much about authority, and children should be seen and not heard, and know your place, right? So when I started recruiting and I'd meet with senior executive people and I get really intimidated with their job title, and a lot of that, even to this day, and I've interviewed countless C-suite, right? I still get nervous approaching them. So I didn't design it, but I put in a question at the end where I ask about your personal life, anything you want to share outside of work, so that when people watching, they do want to approach you, you've got the job title, they're a little intimidated, but if you share that you're into fishing and they're a big fishing enthusiast, at least Absolutely. They can connect with you on that level and not feeling, and it's a way to break the ice. But we'll get into that question later. I just wanted to mention that because you're the first person who
coming here from another country. I mean, even though it felt quite similar, but we're speaking English. I'm obviously listening and hearing the American English. And my first 2 years at the firm, under that instance, I was really struggling because two things: I couldn't understand what anyone was saying. I had to record those meetings and go through it, but I know it and listen 3 times to get the notes right. But in that sense, I was very impressed with how much diversity there was with the world and in one workplace. And then coming to the structural side of it, coming out of IBM, like there's structures, there's layers of management, but in a firm in those Big Four firms, it's a different type of structure, and there's other rules that you're learning, and you're also learning a new culture to that extent, a new workplace culture, even though again they feel similar. The American culture is, I would say, even more conservative, and there's definitely no cocktails or drinking or beers at like a lunch meeting or lunch, even business outings, like that rarely happened. So all those little nuances there, but I think growing up somewhere other than Australia, and I came over when I was 25, and it was, yeah, I guess you're more perceptive to, well, that's interesting. I didn't expect the toilet to flush the other way. I'm joking.
Yeah. I want to jump into a few questions that I've got for you. I mentioned to a few people in my network that I was going to have you on the podcast, and they threw you some questions.
Man,
to
I saw
pick your brain.
that was a...
So this question, all right. So I recently interviewed Julie Hogarth-Williams, the CEO of the Seniors Channel, and her passion is in the area of interactive engagement to combat social isolation.
Hello, Julie from the Seniors Channel. So I just wanted to ask you, what are your thoughts on the importance of technology for entertainment and social connection in the senior community?
I think it's the biggest potential area. First of all, I think it's an area that we're focused on and actually exploring. Oh man, some of the wider elements that I would say are even on the ethical fringe because of what AI is doing and how we have to put controls and guardrails around it and really develop it in a way that we can, especially for this sector, it is going to do a lot of good. It's a process in that front. But from the social aspects, absolutely. I mean, we already know these devices in our pockets. It connects us to the world. I mean, my parents are still in the States, and they get to interact and have video calls that feel more seamless than what we grew up with rotary phones and anything to that extent. So that would just continue. It will then start to even get into more areas where we can even start to tackle depression, and this happened already, and loss and sympathy with some individuals. We've explored even recreating loved ones that are now passed, so that they can actually interact with in VR. And think of a lot of these video models that we can take a photo now and generate a avatar of that individual to manage loneliness.
Absolutely crazy videos of Elon Musk and Trump saying things that that they wouldn't say. Maybe Trump would say it, but you can. Yeah, then you look at the comments and it turns out that it was AI.
Yeah. I mean, it's getting very hard to see. I mean, I even now use it for those that follow my Mirus industry analysis piece and data. We've been using AI to run that for pushing about a year, and that's it's allowed us to reduce a lot of our time, resource, and cost on, I guess, something as conventional as this, which is still very important, but it's about augmenting little pieces. And now that's a full AI model I call Roberto, that we just feed him a script and he talks and dances, and does what you want. But also, if we take that out of that context and put it into what Julie was maybe also referring to is more good for the sector and to our staff. One of the recent situations with Lady Claire Noland, who was a 9-year-old who was tasered by a constable down in a facility in Kuma, and unfortunately she passed away. And the incident was, I guess it really just hung on my conscience of why does that have to happen? I mean, if we think about on both sides, I mean, everybody was following the protocol, the policy to that would have been delivered from the care staff that eventually elevated to call the police because of the threat, to then what the constable and the police were following and their standard protocols of threat, and it led to many lives ruined, from people in the organization through to Claire and her family, and through to even the constables and families in a small community. And I thought, well, how can we ever prevent that from happening, and how can we assist and use these technologies to help combat what I would say is a rising base of complex behaviors. And I say that because I've experienced that with my father-in-law, who suffered from Parkinson's and ended up passing from Lewy body and a frontal lobe dementia, which is a very different type of decline in dementia, and one that many individuals without training and knowledge about it, like one day very lucid and he's there, and the next day you have a different human being. And so helping some of the staff understand that, but amongst a huge population, and on the background of psychotropic, drugs decreasing because of pressures, outside of government, and a rise of these higher complex behavioral management needs, really falling on this workforce that we're so reliant upon, but they need more skills and more tools. And so one of the areas that AI image iteration generation led us to was to come up with this concept of the Nolan intervention, by Mirus, which was really about taking, then in my experience was my wife, Charlotte, who her father just had the act to settle him. And no matter what was happening at the facility, when he was having the worst episodes, it was always a speed dial for Charlotte on the phone. And that's, we would FaceTime, we would do these items, and he would calm down after that interaction. And to me, that just seemed like the most obvious, as long as we could do it responsibly. And so the concept of the Nolan intervention is to enable those key staff members and providers to give their teams access to tools with the family's consent when they have a loved one who does have some of these more complex, aggressive behaviors, and support them in ways that there's evidence that we can help settle, and we can also record the whole interaction, document it. And a language model could talk for days. I mean, there's no shortage of input that's needed, and the tonality and the guardrails and everything you can build around that is really about behavioral de-escalation. And so to me, that's where I want to see it go, and I want to see this technology do real good and help us augment, not the little social media things that our kids do, the Donald Trump memes and stuff like that. Yeah, that's funny. But now what can we do with that type of technology in a higher purpose and with the proper research and investment around it? And that's where we're taking it. And that's what, the good is around some of the cognitive and then other aspects of what this, what data and these items will provide.
Man, you nailed that question. I love that answer. Next question from Dane Mitchell, Managing Director of Optimum Allied Health.
Beyond the initial ANAC assessment, what evidence have you seen that providers who invest in ongoing targeted allied health program see a tangible impact on their financial sustainability? Not just through funding, but by maintaining residents' mobility, reducing care minutes, and ultimately lowering their overall care cost.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, going back to my father's example, with Parkinson's, it was about strength and mobility and falls prevention and whatever you could throw at that bastard of a neurological condition. And one of the things that that I was reflecting on one night when we knew we needed, and at the time we were using a lot of the 4B type of resources for more walking and strength training and movement and exercise, because it is so important. And Dane's absolutely right. It is a vital role. It's not included right now directly in what the ANAC instrument funds in this direct care time calc, but it does pay in some of the extra items if providers can stretch that. But is it enough? I would say no, because of my experience with some of these conditions I'm noting. And I think what I would see happening with relation to these allied health side of it is that it will become a point of differentiation as a provider as well. Those providers that really go above and beyond just the base that our government is setting and taxpayer, so thank you for your taxes, entitlements that are paid through this mechanism. They really want to see innovation happen and happen at that grassroots level where they feel and the funding that is being allocated to the instruments is enough to support a business, but is it enough to make it amazing and give the best? No, but it is a great baseline to have as a society. And so I see where allied health can become is really that point of differentiation, a point of how providers can actually get maybe specific conditions more than others. Like we may be, we see this with groups like Hammond Care, who specialize in more dementia-related, management of residents than, groups that have a pure focus as a Parkinson's or other neurological, and these are more complex, situations. So really using it as a differentiator. I also think with this, vendors, one of the features we're building in our platform is to enable even families to buy shifts, buy time. I wish back when Mike was in care, it was easier to just say, we had a care that was supplementing some activities, but I almost felt like, well, he really has a great connection with that physio team at this facility. And can we contribute to that in some way? And then I was saying, well, we have the rostering program. Why can't we just, link it together? And that's where that innovation comes from. So I guess back to Dane's question in that, yes, there needs to be more strategies leveraged, but it can't always come from government. It can't always come from providers. It really has to come from a collective of your software vendors, the providers, the innovative carers and physios, and there's a lot of them out there. And when they're in the midst of it and actually seeing the simple things that could make this resident's life better, or their operations, or the outcomes they're doing, better for us, then we all win. That's where I want it to go, and I can see how we can get there. But it's going to be in different components over the years. So yeah, Dane, I'm with you.
Yeah, well, thank you for your answer, and thank you for your question, Dane. Final question from Nilesh Bansal, the principal and founder at Aurelia Legal. He is an immigration law firm specializing in the 482, 186 visa sponsorships, primarily for the aged care sector. Based on all the financial data you see, when an aged care home has a revolving door of staff and has to constantly rely on temporary agencies, what is the real cost to their business? Then on the flip side, when you see a provider invest in building a stable permanent team, often with skilled staff from overseas, what are the biggest positive changes you see in their financial numbers?
Yeah, so it's a great question. What is the cost is huge. It is so immense that a lot of groups, go broken by it. It's probably led to groups going and having to merge and give up perhaps even some of the community operations they've relied on and had for so many years. So the cost is real, it's tangible. And if you think about the intangibles, the experiences we give our residents in these care, this is their home. Think about what it feels like to have 15 different faces coming to your home every day, and none of them are the same, and they're always changing. Everyone is doing the best and caring, but it's still, as a vulnerable 80, 90, 100-year-old even, it's still a pretty daunting environment to exist on. So that's the challenge, what it can lead to. I think, yes, the best time you can provide is contracted time. Really working with the workforce and going back to those frameworks, ask those 5 whys. Why are people leaving us often? And it may take 5 more whys to start with before you get into that question. And a lot of times it's not as, I'm oversimplifying it, but there's can be a lot of complexities around that. And some of them are even out of the control of these providers because, we are very, geographically displaced population, and that comes with its challenges with I always tell this to my friends in the States when they think about Australia and they don't really have a sense of the population. I said, well, that state of Illinois that Chicago's in yet? Well, that's basically how many people live in the country the size of you. So, they say. But the impact is harder than to find staff and staff to then retain. I think the retention side of it is also part of the challenge. I know a lot of the base rates that have been passed through providers is moving the needle, and it's come at a time when everyone's really struggling with the cash flows even as more comes through. So I mean, if we wouldn't have put those through, gosh, I would have not known. I wanted to see what sector we would have had today. But that's true. But is it enough? No, we want to do better. How can we do better? Well, I mean, that's where coming back to some of the innovation around funding models and what we can, attract in terms of additional revenue streams out of, new ways of working, and things like getting families or finding value capture that your residents and your clients, technically they're all clients and customers of these brands, and so each of these brands needs to think differently and really continue to explore and push their work out of their out of, I guess, the box of the I guess the regulatory mindset, because that's the problem with a lot of the regulatory influence on the sector. It stifles so much of that innovation. It's necessary as a framework and for us to be governed by that, but it's hard to really then match that true innovation where maybe the Googles and other groups can really let go and explore. That's not what it feels like when you're in a business. And I've been in a lot of the the businesses as providers. You're constantly thinking about risks, compliance, and if you look at a spectrum, that sort of untethered and high yellow thinking is at that opposite mindset. And so it's getting that right and getting that combination. And that's where I think also, to my previous point, that ecosystem around the providers also needs to continue to lean in and bring what they see in their innovations, and not be takers and not just be, nope, they're a client, I got 30 other industries I support, I'm account manager, but I want to make sure our contracts are getting signed and renewed. That's old times. I mean, this is about us really making impact and having that impact measurable, and I think coming back to that workforce side, that's where I see workplaces changing, people being proud of what they do and actually stimulated in ways where they can have fulfillment in their roles that are can be very hard day after day, but giving them those breaks or those micro moments to be excited, that's something new and different.
Thank you, Nilesh, for that question, and thanks for that answer. Final question, going back to what I mentioned before, sharing something personal about yourself, so then when you're walking by and you've got that CEO job title, people can approach you and say hi. What can you share about your personal life? What are you interested in? What would stop you in your tracks and have that conversation?
That's a great question. On a hobby-wise, oh wow, I mean, I am a tinker. My dad's an engineer. I've got that disease of the petrol head growing up in Ohio in the shadows of Detroit. So I love naturally aspirated old things. Like the engineering of it.
Sounds like you've got a few toys in your garage then.
Well, I love the old Land Rovers. Well, because they're affordable, not like some of these other collector vehicles you see going around. Yeah. But to me, I'm being of a design mindset and thinking about like the software, and that's another design filament. But I really appreciate the arts and culture, and that's influences on society. But then you bring that into even more material and object-led things. That's to me what some of these old iconic designs are. But even the engines and the intricacies of how they've come together, and then even their stories that they carry over the years. Whether there's a piece of a wrench that's been welded by a farmer onto the accelerator as just a way to fix something in the bush that's now part of your new ownership or custodianship of this object. So definitely the car side of it, and then I'm a sportster. I've played ice hockey, and actually had the benefit of also being on the junior Olympic team. Went to Lillehammer in '94.
Say that again. You were on an Olympic team?
I was again very handy with I was being busy, the puck, and I think a lot of things in motion is something my brain can manage well. So ice hockey just sort of was my out, and I put pretty much every waking hour into it for quite a bit of my childhood. I mean, Ohio has long winters and very cold.
When was the last time you were on the ice with a stick in your hand?
Oh, well, this is my other letter to Annika Wells as the sports minister. Until the rink in Macquarie was decommissioned to have the pipes put in, because I do play there, and I, even into my mid-40s, was playing with the Bears and the AIHL until I kind of had a slap shot in the face, and I said, maybe it's time to, maybe.
So you're emailing
Full time.
Annika about aged care and the
And
hockey
and
rink.
saying, we need more rinks. I mean, how could you have two national teams in a country, and one of them has our only NHLer, Nathan Walker, who's a Stanley Cup Australian holder, and we can't even have a team play in their home rink this season, and so they've had to break up and go into other teams. But to me, that's un-Australian. I mean, imagine a cricket pitch that couldn't hold its team, or a rugby league field. But so, and also we've been combated with so much development. And I get it. We need a lot more houses, and unfortunately, those big rinks take up a lot of space. So, Norwest out there with Sydney Ice Arena. That's when the Metro went in, that's gone. There's been about 10 rinks that, which is a big component of our infrastructure for ice hockey, all gone. And so, Annika, if you're listening to our team or sports minister, let's look after the ice hockey sports. We've got Nathan over there and our fantastic speed skater. How good of a gold medal is that?
My goal is to have Annika on the podcast one day. So if I do get her on, I'll make sure to mention
yes, Annika,
your request.
Come on.
Robert, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thank you for
It's been
having
a pleasure speaking with you.
Likewise.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers, guys.